pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's freaking bad.
Good evening. I like that we get more attendance as we approach annual town meeting and the elections. I have one announcement. The Class 2 Auto Dealer License public hearing for 40 Summer Street, originally scheduled for tonight, has been rescheduled to Tuesday, April 9th at 7 p.m. That was advertised in the Ledger on March 29th, and I believe letters were sent to the abutters. Do you have an announcement before we start?
Just a quick announcement. There's a Global Youth Service Day. It's the English Community Service Learning Projects at the Lunenburg High School, and that's on April 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. So that's all the students who did community service learning projects when they're gonna present their projects.
Okay, thank you. May we get the public access in the control room to turn up the sound in the auditorium here, please? Is there any public comment from the board?
No.
Is there any public comment from the public? Please.
Tom Alonso, 284 Lancaster Avenue, speaking on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Boys and Girls Club. Today is our 10-day countdown to next Friday's Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? The fundraising is going very well, but we could use all the help we can get, and we ask the town to help support that. In attendance, in donations, which you can do online, you can support everything from $10 all the way up. You can support a sixth grader for $10, a question for $25. The categories go all the way up. So obviously anything we can do. It's our last big fundraiser of the fiscal year. We'd like to end big, and it's a great event, family-filled, family-oriented event that's full of fun, excitement, good challenge, good friendly competition, and we are going to have the addition of music this year. So instead of silence during the interludes, we're actually going to have appropriate music for the question answering that I think will bring a chuckle to everyone. So I hope everybody can attend, and it starts at 7 at the high school, and it'll go from 7 to, we generally finish around 9 o'clock. So it ends early enough for everybody to get out there, and I look forward to seeing everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment, please?
My name is Terry Birchfield. I am a member of the Finance Committee. I live at 118 White Street. I'm not used to standing on this side. Basically, what I wanted to comment on tonight has to do with at the last Finance Committee meeting, someone did point out that it appeared that the Finance Committee, through its lack of discussion, was rubber stamping the budget as presented by the town manager, which is a fair assessment. I mean, basically, yes, I do understand that when I'm trying to let people talk, I don't talk. So I just wanted to make sure that I left the Board of Selectmen, as you are going to be looking at the warrant articles tonight, understand at least my thinking on some of the budget items that were presented. And why we voted the way we did, or why I voted the way I did. And certainly I'll start with on the capital plan. I was comfortable voting yes on the capital plan, knowing that there's still a question about what the issue of the tanks might end up costing in the long run. Basically, in my mind, there's still time to address that between now and the time the project would occur, if the project does occur, and whether or not there's going to be any savings to be seen through grants. As far as the other budget and some of the more controversial items in there, the assistant town manager, I would say, was something that has been in the budget in the past, was eliminated back in 2012, I think was the last year that that position existed. I think as we've been working along for the past 6 years that I've been on the committee trying to put positions back, that one's been one of the last ones to, I think, go back. And I think it's a necessary position. I see a lot of use for that position. I see a lot of places where it would be helpful to have somebody with that kind of a background in personnel experience, in HR experience, especially as I think the other thing I've been talking about is we haven't discussed level services for a very long time. It would be good to have somebody who can spearhead that. The other piece that was in the budget that I was supportive of was the recreation position going back in. That one, I would have supported it full-time. I think that there's a lot given, again, future planning or future plans that I've seen through the Open Space and Recreation Committee and what they put forward in terms of being able to qualify for grants down the road. I thought that would be the perfect position to have in place to start to look at things like pocket parks and to start to look at taking care of the resources that we currently have. In terms of the things that threw us off, again, you know, you have that unfunded mandate of the stormwater throwing, okay, the recreation position and the personnel position were in there as full-time initially, but that had to come out because all of a sudden there's a surprise expenditure. That happens. The other is that, yes, I would like to support the schools a little bit more, but I would also point out that the Finance Committee has supported budgets in the last 2 years that increased it 6.5%. In 2018 and 3% last year and this year. So we've seen a lot of services put back in that program. And again, in my mind, I'm looking down the road between now and Fall Town Meeting. There's still more information to come that may actually make that not such a bad thing. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there as a public comment just so that if you're wondering how anybody on the Finance Committee was thinking about those things, that's where I was. So, thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Sarah Kammerer, 304 Lancaster Ave. I said pretty much everything I wanted to say at the Finance Committee meeting, but I would like to say you also have a choice about whether you approve the warrant article in the current budget. And for everything I said at the Finance Committee meeting, I hope you choose another option. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay. I'm going to make 2 adjustments to the agenda. We have 2 appointments this evening where the appointees are in our audience, and as opposed to making them wait through our other business, I'd like to move them up. I'd like to ask the police chief to come forward with regard to one of his appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to recommend Robert DeConza for an appointment to the position of Reserve Police Officer. Bob began his career in law enforcement when he served as an auxiliary police officer in the city of Fitchburg, and then as a full-time deputy sheriff with the Worcester County Sheriff's Department, where he served as an equestrian officer. While working as a deputy sheriff, Bob was appointed as a reserve officer in Lunenburg on June 28, 1988, and served in that position for many years. Bob left the Lunenburg Police Department and the Sheriff's Department to take a full-time law enforcement job with the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina Police Department. He then returned to Massachusetts in 2004, was appointed as a full-time officer on July 30th, and successfully completed the MPTC Police Academy in Boylston. Bob's since been trained in many career development areas, including standardized field sobriety training, accident investigation. For many years, Bob served as a traffic enforcement officer and motor vehicle crash investigator. Although Bob will have retired as of yesterday of this year as a full-time police officer, he expressed an interest to stay on the department as a reserve, where he thought he would be helpful in covering overtime shifts and details. I agree that Bob would be very helpful given his extensive training and experience, and particularly where the number of reserve officers will likely drop below 10 this year. And I just want to emphasize the fact that it may get pretty busy with respect to details and so forth, because the Summer Street job, and then there's the possibility next year of that bridge being replaced in front of Mackey's and Pleasant Street and so on and so forth. So highly recommend that you make this appointment. I think it's a real worthwhile one. And also, I want to express my gratitude excuse me, to Bob for all his years in law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
First off, I'd like to recognize Officer DeCanza. Could you stand up, Bob? Congratulations.
It's been an honor to serve the community. When I first came in...
You want to come up? Let the folks at home see you too. Please.
I'm going to try to... Everybody. It's been an honor to serve the community of Lunenburg. When I first came here, Lunenburg Police Department was my family. I was a single man. Now I have a wife, 2 small children, and a lot of responsibility. I put in actually 32 years of law enforcement throughout Myrtle Beach, Lunenburg, Sheriff's Department, and I just think it's time to retire, and I would actually love the opportunity to serve Lunenburg on a part-time basis and help out with the manpower issues and details.
Thank you. Can I get a motion?
So I move we accept the resignation of the full-time police officer and appoint Robert DeCanza as a reserve police officer.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. And our second appointment is an appointment by the Board of Selectmen for a member at large to the Americans with Disability Committee, and that appointment is made by the town manager, if I'm not mistaken.
So I ask Barbara Reynolds if she can come.
Hi.
Barbara Reynolds, 952 Flat Hill Road.
Okay. And the town manager is recommending you for appointment to the Americans with Disabilities Committee.
Yes.
Can you tell us why you want to serve on that committee?
Well, every now and, first of all, it's an honor to serve the town. And I have for many, many years in different capacities, and I'm now the representative for Monty Tech, representing Lunenburg. But every now and then I call Heather and I say, Heather, I need to do something more for the town. So she told me about this. She tells me about all the committees, and I know about them. I can read the ledger. And I say, oh, I've done that for 14 years. Oh, I've already done that. So she told me about this committee, and it had not been approved by the Attorney General yet. So I've been waiting, and she keeps sending me a note. It's coming, it's coming. So I am interested. I have a daughter-in-law that has severe disability with oxygen and in a wheelchair and many other things. She has MS. So I'm very sensitive to people as I go through the stores, how people are trying to reach things or get things. And I want to do my part, and I thought that's the way I could serve this town. So I'm very interested.
Great.
So move we ratify the town manager's appointment of Barbara Reynolds to the American with Disabilities Committee.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in
Thank
favor?
you very much.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for volunteering. I'm going to hold our other appointments till later. Our first appointment is a public hearing. I'll read the hearing notice. The licensing authority will hold a public hearing Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019, 7:05 p.m. at the Town Hall, 17 Main Street, second floor, Lunenburg, on the application from NJLJ Properties LLC, 280 Air Road, Harvard, Mass, for keeping, storing, and selling 40,000 gallons of gasoline, diesel fuel, gasoline and diesel fuel underground on property located at 400 Electric Avenue, Board of Selectmen Licensing Authority. And you are?
My name is Carolyn Parker, 3 Lorien Ave, Worcester, Massachusetts, and I'm here representing NJLJ Properties LLC. This is the second gas station that this person will be building in Lunenburg. They have another location already. So we're just here to, we've been approved by the planning board. Everybody else, we're just here to get the license. The fire department signed off on it. The gas station will be a self-serve gas station. Actually drafted the fire suppression plans and sent those to the local fire department for his review and approval. And once we get a license, we can then send those plans to the state fire marshal for approval. So,
The application and all the background materials in your package.
Yep.
And the fire chief has signed off on it to this point. Any questions?
Not for me.
Can I get a motion?
All right, move we approve the gasoline and diesel storage license for 400 Electric Avenue.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
now I gave her like an original application, and if someone wants to sign it, I can
Yep,
take
working
it
on
with
it.
me.
This one here.
Yeah, it'll be-
Actually, the assistant had a different application in the packet. It looked like the same page on the first page, but
You guys have something new online, so I don't know. That's the one that the state requires, so.
if you want to pass that down.
I had just brought my original that I had.
Yep, right there. If we can call you tomorrow and we'll get you the, we can get you the application tomorrow. Right, because we'll need copies of everything before we,
I can scan and email it back to you. Would you like me to do that?
That's not our normal
Yeah,
I'm
procedure.
trustworthy. All right, that's fine. And
Okay.
then you'll mail me the original, or?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to give it to the fire department, he can throw it in with my plans.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Our 7:15 appointment is a continuation of the one-day entertainment license hearing for Saturday, June 8th, and I guess also a continuation of the one-day entertainment license for July 19th and July 21st. And we continued this from our last meeting. There is information in your packet, and I see Mr. Bowen approaching the podium. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. Robert Bowen, representing the applicant. As you know, I also happen to be a Lunenburg resident, 1886 Massachusetts Avenue. The presentation I'm going to make tonight is dramatically different than the presentation I was prepared to make just 24 hours ago. But there's something that I feel that needs to be addressed. As some members of the board may be aware, there's been a recent explosion on social media of criticism, rumors, innuendos regarding the applicant at 300 Holman. It's been percolating in the background, but yesterday was over the top, and it's conduct that really, I mean, there's no other word for it. It is defamation of character, and it needs to stop. We need to have these conversations here based on facts, based on the law, and that's why we're here tonight, to have those conversations. I appreciate that some of the abutters have been at these meetings and have engaged in those conversations, and I think that's great, and I'm sure that they're watching at home now too, and I don't have a problem with that. That's what the process is all about. But the defamation of character needs to stop. If it doesn't stop, my client's going to have to take appropriate action. I raise it here tonight because I'm aware that members of this board and members of some of the other land use boards, the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, are present on social media. I don't mean to say that I've seen any of them actively engaging in these particular conversations, but I know that some of you are there and you see these conversations and you can't unhear these conversations. But what we're talking about here tonight needs to be decided on what's going on here and the evidence that's presented at this hearing, and the outside stuff just needs to stop. That's not what Lunenburg is all about. The second thing I just want to mention in passing, because it's related to all of this, as you probably are aware, we have petitioned for 2 warrant articles that are related to these types of issues. One proposes a new use, not just for this property, but other properties, and the other proposes a special event permitting process, and we used the model for that, the same model that the board has been working with some tweaks. And I felt that it was important that we explain why we've done what we did. Unfortunately, with the timing of everything, the warrant closing when it did, we had to act. The building commissioner, in his letter to the applicant, and then again at the meeting when we were here 2 weeks ago, invited him to talk about a new proposed use. Personally, I think the ultimate solution is the special event process. However, we were pushed in the direction of proposing a new use, so that's what we've done. Both of these have been submitted really at this point as placeholders. We're not trying to usurp the authority of this board. We're not trying to do an end run around this board or any of the boards, but with the timing of the warrant closing, if we didn't put something out there, we'd be, if there's a special town meeting in the fall, at best 6 months down the road, and it's already been 2 years. So I don't want this board to feel like we're trying to do an end run. It's a placeholder to keep the conversation going, and it's our hope that with the planning board and with this board, we can all collectively and constructively present something in a unified manner to town meeting that then the town meeting can decide on. So we're here tonight to continue that conversation. So I take us back to the last time we were here. When this board continued this meeting, at least some members of the board were suggesting to us that they needed additional information. We were a little bit confused by that because we thought we had provided the information. You know, with respect to the first event, the photography event, we answered some very specific questions. There were concerns about the number of people. There were concerns about the hours, and we answered those, and we were ready to answer any questions. Nevertheless, the meeting was continued until tonight. Still not knowing what the board was looking for, I followed up with a letter to the town manager, again inviting somebody to tell us what further information the board is looking for. As we sit here, I still don't know, so I'm happy to answer, or the applicant's happy to answer any continuing questions that you have. What I do know is that there was a meeting with the applicant and the relevant town departments, the town manager, and the planning director on Monday that was very constructive, and I believe that you were provided with a memo, Mr. Chairman, and they walked through the logistical issues, and they came up with a set of conditions that we believe address the logistical issues, and I know you have a copy of the memo. I don't know if the whole board has a copy of the memo, but it's our belief that those are perfectly reasonable. We're willing to abide by those conditions, and it's our expectation that an entertainment license granted by the board would be subject to those conditions.
Could I interrupt for a question?
Yes.
We received 3 copies of memorandums. Is there only one in our packet, and is that the one that we're supposed to be thinking about?
There is one in your packet. I wanted to check with, I got one that was a revision that added something. Is that in here?
Yeah.
I don't know if is that in here?
Yes.
I have that if
Is
the
it
board
the one
needs
that
it,
is in here?
or I can tell you what it added.
Let's make sure we're looking at the right one.
Right.
It was additive to the other one. It was just a thing on noise that got added, if I'm correctly.
Correct.
Correct. Is that true, Adam?
That's correct.
Yeah. So do we have that?
Let me make sure we're all on the
It's
same line.
labeled 2019, April 2nd, 300 Holman
Right.
events.
But sometimes things have the same date and they don't have any like revision or anything, so 2 different documents have the same date, which is pretty confusing.
Yeah, this one doesn't say.
It'll be the one that has 3 paragraphs before the bullet points.
Yeah, this one doesn't. At least the one I'm looking at doesn't.
So in the future, I would really appreciate it if things have, if 2 different documents have the same date, that one say revised.
They have 2 different titles.
Okay, what's the
So-
title we're supposed to be looking for?
2019, April 2nd, 300 Holman Street, Holman Events.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
I found it.
Where was it?
It says 2019_2_April 300 Holman Events.
Let me see.
And I believe the only change was the addition of that 3rd paragraph.
Thank you.
All right, so we do in fact have
Okay.
the most recent memo.
Great.
If I understand it correctly, this is a result of the meeting with the applicant, the land use director, the town manager, the police chiefs, whoever was there. And what we're here tonight to do as part of the continuation is to add to that anything that the board had. I believe last week there were some concerns about
Number of people.
putting further restrictions.
I think Katie was worried about the number of people and
Right.
hours about, but those were the only specific references I heard.
Okay.
I can say that at that meeting, the numbers of people were discussed, and I don't want to put words in Mr. Bernie's mouth. Perhaps he can share with you what the result of that was, but given the nature of these events, there did not seem to be an overwhelming concern about size issues, but I don't, and that's why I think it didn't make it to this memorandum, but I don't want to put words in Mr. Bernie's mouth. Although I just did.
I can speak to that 'cause being at that meeting. The parking was discussed, and the parking can accommodate 250 vehicles. So if you want to take that in consideration of attendees, that's what the land is able to accommodate for parking.
Is there any other input? Do we feel the need to hear from Mr. Bernie as a result of his memo, or the need to comment in any way?
Well, I said last meeting that I supported the events. It's the big outstanding issue for me seemed to be the building commissioner's letter, and that Mr. Massey has to clear up with the ZBA his use issues. But as far as the event and what's been proposed before us as far as planning an event, as would be anywhere else in town, I think what's been given to us is satisfactory to say the event will be held in a reasonable manner.
I agree. My biggest concern last time, and I believe I might have been the dissenting vote on the first try, was solely the building department's memo and the cease and desist. And my feeling is that I'm not sure we even need entertainment licenses for private events on private property. And what we began working on a year ago was an entertainment license, and it evolved to a state where we said it may be required, or we may want to bring it to town meeting for public events on private property or private events on public property, and I could get behind that with the right set of criteria. I personally, and in response to your original thing, I personally have pretty much zero concern in this chair on what the event is about, or who's having it, or, you know, whether it's arts or pride or whatever. And I know many people have spoken to that, and I don't believe that that's relative to what we're talking about here. I think what we're talking about here is an event on a piece of property, and whether it requires an entertainment license, and if it does, what are the requirements for that entertainment license. I'm having trouble getting through the building department's memo that put a cease and desist on the use of the property for this purpose. And I'm told that until that's cleared, the event can't happen outside of our jurisdiction. So that what we're being asked to do is to approve an entertainment license that would approve this if the zoning issue were cleared up. And that's what I've been told is the case, unless somebody tells me otherwise. I still feel uncomfortable going against what our building official has said. And the reason for that is the couple we've done so far, while we built a formal policy, were done in absence of either a formal policy or a ruling by zoning or building or anybody else.
Perhaps I can give you a little more comfort. I don't know. I did provide a letter to the town manager and to the planning director outlining briefly what I believe are the legal issues. And it's our position that although obviously related, this board's function and the building commissioner with the zoning board's function are two different things. You're obviously both in the big picture concerned with the general welfare, and safety of the town. But there is case law, and I provided citation to it, which speaks to the fact that the licensing process is very different from the zoning process, and they have their different concerns and their different spheres. And all this board is saying is what you just said. We approve of the event because it's met the conditions for the event. You're not going against the zoning determination, which in fact has not been finally made yet. You're making a different determination. And I would add to that I think that Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 181, which is the entertainment licensing statute, lays out very specifically 4 criteria that the board is supposed to consider when it considers these entertainment licenses. Whether the event is a nuisance, whether there's traffic, whether there's disruptive conduct, or whether there's excessive noise. That's it in the statute. The statute doesn't say anything about zoning. I mean, obviously zoning is a fact, and the board can take the fact of the zone that it's in into consideration, just like the board can take the fact that there's 140 acres into consideration, and just like the board can take into consideration the fact that notwithstanding any zoning issues on a parcel this size, the location of the actual event from any real abutters is hundreds and hundreds of feet. So certainly the zoning is a fact in deliberating over these other factors that the board can take into consideration, but I don't think it's legally permissible for the board just to say, oh, because it doesn't comply with zoning, we're not going to do it. I don't think that's what the statutory charge is. And even if you thought you could, I don't think you should. And I go back to my opening remarks. I don't want this board to feel bullied by what's going on in social media. We'd like this board to take a stand and say, these are the kind of events, if it's the case, that these are the kind of events we would like to encourage people to share their property with. And I'd like the board to take that position, and that would be a position that we would go forward with in the zoning process as well. So I don't know if I've given you any more comfort or not, but they are two distinct things you're doing, and it's not my perception that a vote on these licenses in the affirmative is an affront to zoning, which is a totally different question that we're about to embark on.
Can I make a couple comments? First, I avoid social media totally, so I'm not aware of any of that, and my life is happier because of that, I believe. And second, in the letter from Commissioner, or from Building Inspector Rhodes, in one paragraph, he says, "Also, during our March 2017 meeting, we discussed your proposal at the time for a one-time event. I opined that because the proposed event was limited in scope and duration, it would be allowed if the Board of Selectmen issued an entertainment license." So in this paragraph, he's saying it's okay, if the Board of Selectmen issues an entertainment license, it is allowed.
Is that a question?
No, I'm saying, I'm reading from his.
No, I understand. Again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it seems to me that with respect to the underlying zoning, which again, I don't think is what we're here to decide tonight, but with respect to the underlying zoning, the building commissioner seems to think that there's a magic number of events that somehow transfigures something from a primarily residential use to a commercial use, and that's what the discussion is going to be at the Zoning Board of Appeals. So reading between the lines, the building commissioner seems to be of the opinion that one event is okay. Unclear from that opinion whether 2 events is not okay, or 10 events is not okay, or 29 events is not okay, but that's the zoning issue.
Well, you know, to me, you can approve 1 event, 2 events, or 3 events. You know, maybe by the time event 5 comes around, you go, okay, that's enough, we're not going to allow any more, or this is your last one, we won't allow any more this year. So we haven't made that determination, so it seems to me disrespectful to say we're not going to allow any because we haven't decided how many you can have. That doesn't seem to make sense to me.
And my suggestion would be, let's have a couple and see how they go, and that will inform the process of deciding how many is the right number, but that's up for the board to decide.
Because when we approve the license for the Stillman's Fair, we don't ask them, are you sure this is the only one you're going to have? You know, we don't put any parameters on the Stillman Fair, for example. He could have one in December.
The bigger topic of entertainment licenses, their needs and the criteria is still work in progress, and whether it's done on the course it was on or expedited by the fact that it's an article on the town warrant remains to be seen. I don't think either of those factors really weighs in on this particular request. And I'm going to ask the board to limit ourselves to these 3 requests that we kind of are dealing with as if they're one, unless the board pleases to take them individually. Just in response, you made me feel more comfortable for a while until you mentioned bullying by social media. That's not going to happen to me, ever.
I should learn to stop.
Right. Do you have anything to add?
No,
What I'm going to do, and we have covered this a lot, but because it is a public hearing and we have continued it, I'm going to allow a few people to speak. I'd ask you to please consider, if you've covered the territory before, we have heard it. We do understand it. Don't need to say it again, but if you feel the absolute need to do so, it's your right. So, sir, I assume you'd like to speak. Please tell us who you are.
My name is Derek Matson. I live at 4 Windermere Drive in Lunenburg. As we've just heard, there are many related topics happening concurrently with regard to this property. I'd like to focus solely on the 3 upcoming requested entertainment licenses that are before the board tonight. All public viewpoints for and against the issue aside, on March 19th of 2019, the Town of Lunenburg's building commissioner and zoning official placed a cease and desist order on the use of 300 Holman Street property for events that are prohibited under the town's zoning laws. The Board of Selectmen must respect this order when considering the request for 3 additional entertainment licenses. The board must also consider the message that would be sent to the town as a whole if they choose to vote in favor of any one of these 3 newly requested licenses. A yes vote, despite knowing the position of the building commissioner and land abutters, would only encourage additional zoning violations and would not be in anyone's best interest. For the building inspector to finally issue a cease and desist order only further verifies that the owner's past history of disregard of the town's zoning laws. It should be quite clear that the board has no choice but to deny this individual any and all permits not allowed by town zoning. Although they could not be present here tonight, this evening, I do want to show that Vincent and Kathleen Nuck of 503 Holman Street and Steve and Linda Whitman of 473 Holman have both written this board with opposition statements for these license requests. I also have a letter in hand from David Prockview of 733 West Street, who cannot attend this meeting. He asked if I could be allowed to read his letter aloud with your permission.
Okay.
To the Board of Selectmen, it recently came to my attention that Mr. Massey of Tenderness Gathering Place is asking the Board of Selectmen to grant several permits for entertainment licenses on his property. It also came to my attention that many of his neighbors are opposed to this, and that the zoning enforcement officer has sent him cease and desist orders for running entertainment events in the outlying district, a use that is prohibited in this zone. Furthermore, it seems as though he may be attempting to change the bylaws in an effort to get around the restriction in zoning, which is his right. I humbly submit my opinion for your consideration. As a citizen, I would find it appalling if we were to try to torture our zoning or other bylaws for one resident rather than ask that one resident to comport to the bylaws. The zoning bylaws that govern outdoor and indoor entertainment in the outlining district are not new, and he purchased this property, we must assume, with full and complete knowledge. Anyone can see from 4.1J, 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 that these are prohibited uses in outline. To expect the protective bylaws to chase after each new proposal, each new use, is insanity. The zoning bylaws exist not just to protect this person or that person's interests, but to set a stage for all interests in town. They are the underlying game board on which everyone is supposed to play fairly. To back into a property and expect everyone in the neighborhood to accept that one person deems necessary for his survival puts us on a course where the bylaws are not doing their job of providing stability to the town and predictability to the town's people. It would render the zoning bylaws meaningless. I hope the board will continue to stand on a strict interpretation of our bylaws and not allow one person's interests to override the interests of his neighbors. David Prockview. And I just want to add, there was some comment about this had gone on for 2 years, since 2017, and maybe we should give it a chance, and maybe we should see how it goes. A lot's happened since 2017. There haven't been a lot of entertainment licenses granted to 300 because they haven't asked for very many. We're all aware that there's been 30+ events that have gone on there without any request or consideration. And I've also heard that we don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth tonight, but I've heard a lot of words put in people's mouths who aren't here. So I think that's very important to understand. But we're here tonight not to talk about the zoning purposes, what should change, what could change, but we're here to talk about the 3 entertainment licenses that are being requested. I think we have to respect our zoning laws as they exist today and the letter from our zoning board enforcer and deny these entertainment licenses. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Please.
My name is Nate Wallach. I live at 6 Windermere Drive, and I'm an abutter to the property. The answer is no, Doc. Okay? This guy is a manipulator. Okay? He's got a psych degree, and he thinks he can get on some kind of committee and get this done. He wants to rezone his property to get this dwe were there raising boys at my house. okay? We bought a beautiful piece of property, and we're there to raise boys. I don't want this out in back of my neighborhood. It's right out in back of my, I mean, we just put a pool in, okay? And I really, you know, I've heard about a road being put out in back. I depend on you guys to defend us from this, okay? He's here all the time, looking and prodding and poking and trying to get this done. And I depend on you guys to stop this. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, Laura Brzozowski, 21 Francis Ave. I'm not in a butter, not one of Dr. Massey's neighbors, but I was really disturbed last week to hear the credence that was being given to the size of Dr. Massey's property and the insinuations that we need to let him do whatever he wants so he won't develop the land. That's not how democracy works. Each person is equally important. Dr. Massey's point of view is just as important as the many neighbors who oppose him. And I'm really upset that so much credence is being given to the size of his land. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
I do have some show and tell. And I think that if I show it like this, you can see it and the audience can see it. This is an example of photography by a photographer named Peter Layton. Peter Layton has taught at Fitchburg State University for 41 years. He was actually the executor of Minor White's estate, but he was mentored by Minor White, who's a very important photographer. And he's also on the board of the Fitchburg Art Museum, and he's the one that told me how important the Lane collection was. And I think that just in speaking in terms of the importance of photography in this area, the fact that the Lanes collected very important artwork and very important photography that is now housed in the Museum of Fine Arts and in the Fitchburg Art Museum is something that we should be proud of and something that adds to the value of our town. I've lived in town at 323 Northfield Road for over 20 years, and I also am a professor, and I just want to emphasize the fact that I think that specifically if the photography event was held, there would be a lot of interest, there would be a lot of sharing about the topic, and young people would have a chance to see the work of professional photographers. I think that, and we'll just turn to look at the man who was, I thought, rude in this hearing. I think we all need to conduct ourselves with decorum and respect. Everyone has a right to their own opinion. Everyone, as the woman said, everyone in Lunenburg has a right to share what they think should happen in this town. And I would like to see more cultural events occurring in town, not less. So, on that note.
Thank you.
Tom Alonso, 284 Lancaster Avenue, and at the request of the chair, trying to keep this focused, I'll try to really keep this laser focused because the board is being asked, as the attorney for the applicant has said, on an entertainment license. So just a few points, and then maybe something to address your comfort level. The point is that if you were to approve the license, it certainly does not overturn the decision of the building commissioner, nor isn't it an affront to the building commissioner. You are asked to assess a certain amount of criteria with a certain request. To that request, it has been asked of the applicant to meet with city and town officials about safety, about parking and everything that he has done. And then you received a letter today that was talked about earlier in the meeting that He has agreed, everybody has agreed, everybody from the police chief and the fire chief and anybody involved with public health and safety has agreed that this will work and this is okay. So the license is what's in your decision tonight, not the zoning, as people have said. I have my own opinions about zoning, and I intend to voice them at another hearing. But to add to the comfort level that this board might have, the decision of the building official was just made 2 weeks ago. They have a right to appeal. I don't know that they are. I am assuming they will be. But that right to appeal has its own timeline and its own hurdles. It could certainly be that that would take maybe to the end of when this event might happen, at which point if you disallow the license because that's not remedied first, he may run out of time to have this, even though the hurdle would be cleared beforehand. So I would say to you, as an applicant, don't give him an additional timeline hurdle if you agree with the licensing decision and the agreement that was made with town officials. Let the zoning appeal take its course, and if it doesn't get approved or resolved in time, then he won't be able to have the event. I think everybody on the board is clear about that. That's the way I think this should be approached, because again, if the only reason to dissent is because of the zoning, you're giving him 2 hurdles to overcome when really there only should be 1 remaining, and that would be the zoning one. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
On the Lockwood 91 Main Street. So I will try to be brief, but I did have some notes. So the first thing is, I did a public records request from the town. I was curious to see how much has Darren's neighbors complained about him. And it was a stack of, I think Elaine said it was like 4 inches of paper. And I actually got it in digital form, which needed a thumb drive, a big one that couldn't even be sent on the email. And what's interesting to me is, well, aside from that, what concerns me about the zoning, the cease and desist letter that Darren received, which the previous speaker said, this is not in consideration here. But but it is your concern, Jamie. So I do want to mention this. Some of the events that Mr. Rhodes listed here as prohibited activities are a democratic political event to meet State Rep Stephen Hay. Are we now using zoning bylaws to restrict political activities? Because that isn't here. There's other things here too, such as, host students from Innovation Academy. The teen center has come to my backyard. The Turk Hill Middle School used to have a science teacher that would come to my backyard and explore the pond that's behind there. People come to ice skate on the pond, and that's also something else here. And the other thing that's interesting, this list of events starts on 2014. Can we imagine living in a house and having your neighbors taking notes on who you have over since 2014? And Mr. Rhodes' idea that, Darren is having a business there is just ridiculous. He says that it's 7 events per year. It is in his letter. If Darren is running a business and he has 7 events a year, he's going to go bankrupt much sooner than that. So what I see from the neighbors' activities, not Darren's, but from the neighbors' activities, is this non-stop pursuit of getting Darren to conform with them, to conform with the behaviors that they would like. We just had a tenant come here and say, I'm not okay with that, Doc. Well, the Lanes used to have people over and stay there. All the artists that we hear about there in the MFA, they used to come and stay there. So these are not different. What Darren is doing is not any different than what has been done there before, or what other people do in town. I have hosted a wedding in my backyard. A friend asked me, I have a beautiful yard, and I said, of course. I have held a birthday party for a known family member. Again, she wanted to play wiffle ball. I said, of course, why not? These are events that are happening in town over and over, but we have a small group of neighbors. They're making this into a witch hunt. And that's how I see it. You can come here and talk when it's your time. And within the public work, the documents that I received, there was an email to the chief of police because I guess this resident saw 6 cars parked on the parking lot. He called dispatch. I suppose it was not an emergency number, and asked for the police to go there. The police went there. He called again, and he didn't get a response that he wanted. He then sent an email to the chief of police asking how come he didn't get a response back. So my next public forum request is going to be to the police, asking how many calls or such requests has the neighbors put on to the police, because how much of our town resources are we using to, deal with the neighbor that you don't like, that's not conforming with you? So, I don't see, of the events that he said here, Mr. Toll, to be much different than what we all have in our homes, because you said, the zoning board, the cease and desist letter is of your concern. I think the building commissioner, it is my non-legal opinion, he should not have listed political events gathering at our house in this letter. I think this is terrible. He should just, with that, just void this letter and maybe try to come up with a different case for, prohibiting Mr. Darren from having the activities that he would like. And we are just having this here because, again, these neighbors have been watching Darren since 2014, and it's listed here. It's a public document. And they're taking notes. How many cars are parked there? What are they saying? So Darren has given a name to his house, the gathering place. Mr. Tom Alonso calls his home the Bad Manor. Jim Lavette calls his house Casa de Moi. So, they're using all these things. They're not real reasons to prohibit anybody, but they're making a big thing out of it. And we are wasting tons of town resources, and I'm going to put a number to that right after I request the police records to understand what they are doing to our town. This is because they don't like Darren. They don't like the events that he's holding. Because, I'm going to be in my pool with my boys, and I don't want to see drag queens in the backyard. That's literally what we heard.
Okay.
So, anyway.
Thank you.
I appreciate.
I wanted to mention that I asked the building commissioner how many events were in violation, and he said he hasn't determined that.
But he gave the cease and desist letter, and he did say within the letter that there were, in average, 7.5 events per year on Mr. Darren's letter. So that is, but he should have made that determination before sending a cease and desist letter.
Right, because he's not saying he doesn't know how many were in violation.
Right, so. But he listed them all. This is his letter.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to end our public input. Is there any other testimony or input from the board or the building land use director or town manager that we should be considering?
Just a clarification, are we going to taking all 3 as one or going through them individually?
Depends on how you make the motion. I do want to make one point. We had a discussion last week, it's slightly off the point, but it's not. We had a discussion last week about the practice of the board not to vote on significant issues if we weren't all here. There are a couple of items we're going to need to vote on tonight that are time sensitive. I still believe we do have a policy and a practice that's a long-standing policy and practice of the board not to take significant votes when we're at less than full strength. But this one in particular, we owe an answer to the applicant, and there's going to be some on the warrant that we have to vote this evening.
Well, I would like to say that the charter says no action of the multiple member body shall be valid or binding unless ratified by the affirmative vote of the majority of the full multiple member body. So that would mean that all 3 of us would have to vote the same for the vote. to be
Or
valid.
we could ratify it next week. If they, I'd have to do some research into that. I haven't
You
seen
just
that.
right in the charter.
That section is not pertinent to this hearing.
Well, let's take a vote and we'll figure out. We'll get a ruling on that. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the one-day entertainment licenses for Saturday, June 8th and July 19th, as well as the Sunday entertainment license for July 21st, with the stipulation that all the concerns met with the memorandum from the planning director be met, that none of the events exceed more than 250 people, and that the times for the events are adhered to as listed in the applications in front of us.
Second.
Any discussion?
Again, I got to just go back to say that I'm taking the zoning out of this. If anyone from anywhere else in town came forward with these applications and this package of information, I would be approving these licenses. I understand there's a history with the neighborhood and what have you, and that's being taken care of in zoning, but if anyone else in town came forward with this package of information, I'd approve the license.
And I appreciate Mr. Alonso's clarification of some points. Thank you.
I would also like to say that at least I, and hopefully this board, does respect the order issued by the building department, and that we support the building department in pursuing the zoning side of this, but we feel that it's not relevant to the entertainment part of our decision. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. All righty. Our first item, do we want to do I guess we're going to go to old business number 1. We can get through that pretty quickly, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you had a point to make on the Land Acquisition Committee?
At the last meeting, the board discussed the Land Acquisition Committee and the makeup, and the Finance Committee member was inadvertently left off the composition of the committee. So, and to clarify that, it was 2 Open Space Committee members, one being a planning board member by proxy. So the 2 Open Space Committee members will be Brandon Kibbe and Paula Bertram, because she's the planning board member by proxy on Open Space Committee. And we're looking for Board of Selectmen member appointment for that committee tonight.
So 2 open space, 1 BOS, 1 FinCom.
And 1 conservation.
1 Concom.
And when does that have to be filled by? Just
As soon as possible.
okay. Phyllis, you expressed an interest in representing the Board of Selectmen on that committee. Do you still?
I do, unless Damon is, right, you got your
No.
plate pretty full right now.
Well, we actually have a couple of jobs we have to fill, so if you have an interest in that, I'd accept a nomination to name you as our...
Nominate Phyllis to be a representative to the Land Acquisition Committee.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion?
Happy to do it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Do we have to do the Board of Selectmen member of the
That can
Americans
wait
with
till
Disabilities?
That can wait till next meeting,
Okay,
when the full board is here.
okay, fair enough. So, we are up to the town manager performance evaluation process.
Now, I think that we should wait for Katie for this.
Well, we invited the town labor council to be with us, so I think we should at the very least have a discussion. If you want to make a recommendation that we hold any votes, I guess we'd consider that.
Yes, I certainly would.
Well, okay, but, We did have some questions. First of all, I'd like to introduce Mark Terry and ask him to join us. Mark is our labor counsel and serves as town counsel for issues regarding to labor, employment, contracts, etc. Hi.
Good evening. Mark Terry, Myrick O'Connell, as you indicated, town counsel for labor and employment issues.
Thank you. And the meter's running, so I don't want to just say thanks for coming, Mark, and we'll enjoy until next week.
I'll drive faster going home.
No, that's okay. But then, now there were some questions that were submitted to Attorney Terry, and he did respond in writing. Were there any follow-up questions, or?
Yes, I have a follow-up question. I see that you said, as a practical matter, if the board does not coalesce around a certain summary document, and it will functionally fail to provide the town manager with the feedback and direction necessary for the evaluation process to be useful. Therefore, it sounds like if we add back in the summary document, we're all set.
Certainly, as long as you have a summary document at the end of this process that the board, my recommendation is that the board vote on that to accept whatever's presented, then yes, you have accomplished that goal, and then the issues raised individually, the individual evaluations just are the expression of one particular board member's position. That's right.
And since our evaluations are a matter of public record, we can read them during the evaluation meeting.
They become a public record if they're read. They're not.
No, because
the composite document. I should be clear. The document that is voted on by the board that represents I use the word composite to reflect the views of the board as a whole. That document is reviewed in public and is a public record. The individual evaluations can become public records if they are relied upon and present at a board meeting. So for example, if one member were to have his or her individual evaluation with them and to make reference to it, that act makes it a public record, but they aren't by definition public records.
Well, you have to rely on your evaluation to have any discussion about it. You do an evaluation, and you're relying on the information you gather in your evaluation to have the discussion. So you are relying on your evaluation, so that does make it a matter of public record.
The Attorney General's office that enforces the open meeting law has two sort of very strict criteria that they look at. That is, first, the document has to be present, and then the relied upon sort of infers that you're picking up a piece of paper and saying, on my evaluation, and then leading into some
Well, I certainly plan to bring my evaluation and to refer to it. So it will be a matter of public record.
And yours would be individually if you did that. If other board members didn't do that, their evaluations would remain a part of, they would be confidential.
I guess my question would be, why would you want, think of it from the point of view of an employee. All right, it is part of your employment record, your personnel file, but it's tough enough to have a composite be public record for the whole town to hear about. If you were an employee, would you like everybody's input, whether they were one-off or to be a public record that everybody in town gets to see?
If I was the town manager, I certainly would.
I wouldn't. I certainly, it's a, to me, it's a undesirable part of the job to have a composite be public record, because your performance review as a foreman and down at the old steel plant isn't in the newspaper. But it's an unfortunate part of the job as a town manager to have your composite be public record. But I'm not sure I would want every item in my personnel file to be public record.
Well, you should be proud of your work and be happy to have your evaluation a part of the public record. And it's a matter of state law. It does become a part of the public record.
That's why the attorney's here.
He just said it's public record.
If it's present and relied upon.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring it to the meeting, and I'm going to refer to it. And I would hope that every other member of the board would do the same.
Well, I wouldn't.
Well, you're creating the composite, so they suggest that the composite be created by a person who's not on the board, so it's totally objective. I felt last year that my input was not considered.
Well, the point of the summary is to take the mean.
Well, you know, we don't have a numerical.
But still, it's a cross-section of the whole feeling of the whole board. When you
know, I plan to have my evaluation with me, and I would really appreciate it if the other 3 members did as well, because I thought it was very valuable to be able to read the other members' evaluations. I really did. So I would request that everybody bring their evaluation. They don't have to read them if they don't want, but I would like to be able to have a copy of their evaluations. But obviously, I can't demand that you bring your evaluations to the meeting. But I'm bringing mine.
Okay. I just, you know, I think that the objective is for us to have a discussion and to build a composite. The fact that I have been tasked to do that draft and bring it to the meeting and have us discuss it, you know, if you think somebody else would be better at doing that, make a suggestion. I mean, it's been, you know, traditionally it's been the chair. All right. The change in the open meeting law that's made it difficult is that we have always shared, I've always been able to share everybody's package at the end of the whole thing, and you had an ability to see yours versus everybody else's.
And you can do that.
No, I can't.
Yes, you can, according to open meeting law. You have them at the meeting, you can share them.
But that makes them part of the public record.
They are part of the public record.
I don't think that's fair to an employee.
I'm sorry, I disagree. The town manager should be happy to have her evaluation read.
A composite of her evaluation by the entire board.
Well, that certainly as well.
You know, a disgruntled board member who makes unfounded statements gets evened out in a discussion and a composite that the board votes on.
Or conversely, somebody who's a glowing review when the rest of the board doesn't feel that way gets evened out.
Perhaps. You know, assessment is kind of like my line of work. You know, I was a teacher for a very long time, and assessment is something I pride myself on. And
you put all those students' records on the board so everybody in the town could read them.
That has nothing to do with this.
But it does. An employee who's going to have future employment somewhere else should be able to rely on a summary of their work, not the one-offs of seeing a full report from somebody who felt strongly in a certain way.
Well, you should talk to the Attorney General about that.
We have our attorney here to tell us what is and what isn't public record.
And he just did.
So, but I do want to be clear. I mean, understand the context of the open meeting law decision that kind of changed the landscape on this. And so what you did was very common practice among boards and school committees across the state, is that you'd each do an individual evaluation, correct me if I'm wrong on this, it's just my understanding. You'd each do an individual, you'd submit that to the chairperson, the chair would write up a composite. I don't know whether that was brought back for a vote at the end, but it was brought back and discussed. What the court said in the Whalen decision was that because individual board members had the ability to see the other individual board members' individual evaluations before the rest of the community, effectively that was deliberation.
Exactly. Right? I agree with that.
Right. And so what it said was the board members can't see that document before the open meeting. So
I agree.
Right. So the court said there are a couple ways you could deal with this. One is that if the board members want to see the composite document in advance of the meeting, that's fine. You just have to make it available to the public generally. That's one way to see it in advance. Otherwise, you are to wait until it's discussed in open meeting and then it becomes a public record. But the court cases are also clear, one predating Whalen, that as a general proposition, evaluation instruments are, as a public record law, under that law, they are private. They are part of personnel file. It's only, I know where you're going, it's only under the open meeting law that there is this provision. Yes. And the provision applies not just to this type of document, but to any document that's used. If there's a document present in the room when the board's talking about it, whether it's an evaluation or some other document that's presented, that document, because it's present and relied upon, makes it a public record. But they are not, and so what you have articulated as your intent to read it certainly does make that document a public record. But it doesn't, the framework of this case was really about the process and when the board members could see the composite evaluation.
Can I read from the Attorney General's statement?
You're going to make it a public record.
Comprehensive evaluations that aggregate the individual public body members' evaluations are also public records if they are used during the course of a meeting. So we're all going to use our evaluations during the course of that meeting for a discussion. If they don't want to bring theirs, I can't do anything about that. But I am going to use mine. I'm not going to read it word for word, but I am certainly going to use my individual public body members' evaluation, and it's going to be a public record because it's going to be used during the course of the meeting.
And I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay.
I mean, just to be clear, I'm
And
not
the
arguing
only
with
point
you about
I'm
what
trying
the
to make,
process.
Phyllis, is that by doing that, which you have every right to do,
Thank you.
You're giving up a exemption from public document law that exists for personnel records.
Yes, because
I understand. And that's an exemption that I've had 30 years in HR, so I have a little bit of experience in this as well. I believe that somebody's individual performance review, especially if it's from multiple people, 360 reviews and all that kind of stuff, the individual ones are part of the employee's permanent record. They're there, but they're not public.
well, you know, the Attorney General disagrees.
No, he doesn't.
Yes, she does. She agrees that she says it's a public record.
If you use it.
Yeah,
I'm going to use it.
Well, then you've made that a public record.
Yes.
And I'm suggesting there's an exemption from that on public record law, not open meeting law, that you are giving up by doing that.
Yes, the open meeting law carves out an exception from the personnel records exemption from the public records law for materials used in a performance evaluation of an individual bearing on his professional competence.
Right.
The open meeting law carves out that exemption.
Right, and you're not using that exemption because you're bringing it, which you have every right to do. I just think it's poor HR practice.
Yeah, that's your opinion.
But I mean, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it.
Thank you.
Right. And I wouldn't do it again because I think being an employee, it's your personnel record. I wouldn't want it out there, but it's obviously you're right. If you would like to do that, go ahead and do it. I will not be doing that.
Well, I'm sorry that you won't, but it's your prerogative.
There's one other point that you raised earlier, and I'm not trying to speak to the issue you've been talking about, but just as a point of information, because I was here a few weeks ago, and the concern was raised then when I was here on something else, but the board was talking about this issue.
The board was talking about this issue?
There was a discussion about the process, and in particular the point that you raised just a few minutes ago with regard to sort of concerns about the composite document. And my observation from watching that dialogue was that it wasn't clear to me, at least then, whether the board had a practice of actually voting the composite document. And so one of the things I just would say is a practical matter, whether, regardless of what you do with the individual documents, is that when a composite's presented, it obviously is the work of the chair pulling together presumably his good faith interpretation and synthesis of what's provided. It's up to the board whether to vote to accept that. You know, the board should vote, and it can vote thumbs up, thumbs down, but certainly to your concern about are your views or is a person's particular views plus or minus reflected, there's an opportunity like there is on any other matter that's before the board to vote to amend a proposed document or something like that. So if any individual member felt like their view, like you said, positive or negative, wasn't reflected, they can certainly propose an amendment to the document that's prepared by the chair. And that is another way to ensure that the board as a whole hopefully can agree upon what the official board document will be. But again, that doesn't speak to the issue you've been speaking to largely with regard to the individual documents.
Thank you.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Phyllis, I believe we did have a discussion last year of the document. I don't know if we voted on it or not, but we did have a discussion.
I don't remember if.
And we talked about, you know, the board felt this, one member felt this, we all had input to that discussion. I don't know if we voted on the composite at the end.
I don't think we did, but I don't.
Okay.
I know we discussed it. I'm pretty sure we voted on
I
it.
think Selectman Luck wasn't there that night.
Excuse me?
I think you were away that night.
Oh. Yeah, I wasn't here.
Okay. All righty. So were there any, one of the reasons we had Attorney Terry with us tonight is to answer any questions you had about the process. All right, because we're gonna have to develop a process, and according to the town manager's contract, we are required, or we owe her a review by the end of the year, starting April 15th and done before May 15th or thereabouts. We had a calendar on that process. There were some questions we submitted to Attorney Terry. He responded. Do you have any other concerns? Anybody,
No, it seems very straightforward at this point.
So can we, I don't know that we need to vote this in regard to your point with Mrs. Adams not being here, but we're on a calendar.
But there really isn't anything to vote on, is there? I mean,
No.
you're going to provide a summary, and we have the right to bring our evaluations, share them, and read them into the record. So I guess I don't see the need to vote.
Well, yeah, the point is what we owe her is a composite review that we all agree with, not 4 individual reviews.
You can summarize them, yeah.
And we would have to vote that that's the summary. That's the document she gets as her review.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my evaluation will also be a matter of public record, and she'll have that in her personnel file, like she'll have everybody else's evaluation in her personnel file.
Okay. I just want to be real clear that the one that she'll have in her personnel file that is her review from the board is the one that we all agree on.
She'll have all of our evaluations in her.
I think, as I understand the point is, there's got, under her contract, and because boards only make decisions as boards, not as individuals, there's one that becomes sort of the official board review, which would be the composite. The other 4 individuals, assuming everybody fills one out, or 3, I don't know if the chair does as well, become a part of her personnel file as well. I think you're both saying the same thing.
Right, right.
I do.
All right. So the schedule that we are working on is to have the town manager complete the self-evaluation by April 15th. We will do our work and begin meeting with her the week of April 22nd. I'll do the composite based on what you all give me between April 30th and May 7th, which is a tall order, but I'll commit to that. And we'll schedule the public meeting for the 7th of May. And then hopefully we'll agree to it on the 7th of May and perhaps have a meeting on the 14th of May, which is the last meeting prior to the election, that will deal with any salary action or anything else as a result of that review on May 14th.
Now, we can send you our evaluation sooner than, I would assume we need to meet with the town manager and then make whatever adjustments there are to the evaluation. We can get it to you before the 30th if we're ready, right?
Sure. Oh, yeah, I'd prefer that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that'd be great. Sure. I'm just allowing time for you to schedule time with the town manager.
Great.
Okay. Was there anything we missed that you think you need to add?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Good night, folks.
Have a good night.
All righty.
No.
Our next old business item is a discussion of the town manager recommended FY20 budget.
Okay, so this is to follow up discussion. Any questions before we go through the articles for town meeting? And in your packet is kind of a summarized PowerPoint of slides I touched on at the Finance Committee public hearing. And as far as what the recommendation looks like, where we started from the starting point in December with the target budget highlights, as well as the...
What's it called? I don't see
Yeah,
it.
where is it?
It's called FY20
TM budget.
Town Manager
What's
Budget.
on there?
There's a folder, it says...
Oh, got it.
Okay.
FY20 town manager budget.
Yep.
Can you help me with that?
It's in a folder. Oh, you're on the home street thing. Budget.
All set?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, are you looking for issues off the bat, or are you going to make a presentation first?
I was just going to go over a quick summary and so not go through each slide in detail, because it's essentially the same presentation that you were present for at the Finance Committee meeting. But the one things I did want to touch on, because I know there's been a lot of questions on, is the HR director and assistant town manager position. So if you go to the slide that I discussed at the Finance Committee meeting, this position would, the education and experience that would be required typically for this position is a bachelor's in public administration, human resource administration, business administration, or related fields, with 5 to 7 years of related experience, preferably in a municipal setting. And the duties for the HR function of the position would be to work with all the department heads on hiring, disciplining, and termination of employees, research and create competitive compensation system to retain qualified individuals, research, prepare, and recommend personnel policies and practices, assist in interviewing and selection of candidates, provide guidance to all department heads regarding personnel policies and procedures, grievance procedure administration, investigate, mediate, and resolve personnel problems, employee recruitment, develop procedures and oversee orientation for new employees, and maintain and recommend revisions to the employee handbook. As part of the assistant town manager role, duties would include assist with procurement and putting bid packages together and other special projects as assigned. I also included a slide with all the roles of the town manager as per the charter. That's in section 4 Article 4, Section 2. So the reason I'm recommending this position is to create greater efficiencies for all departments, as this would support all departments. Besides these duties, which include my duties being Chief Administrative Officer, I'm also the Hearing Officer, Hazardous Waste Coordinator, Personnel Administrator, Chief Procurement Officer, the town's the ADA Coordinator, the Right to Know Coordinator, a member of the Administration Board of Regional Dispatch, and the Parking Clerk. This is a position that, in my assessment, will create greater efficiencies for all town departments, and is a reinstatement of a position that was cut in fiscal 13. Creating this position will not eliminate my involvement in personnel issues, but as allowed under the charter, delegate certain duties to this subordinate. Right now, there is no one to delegate this to. The position will improve how we onboard and recruit and retain employees. The responsibilities outlined for this position are not ones that can be done by volunteer staff. And I stand by my recommendation that this is a priority need and one that would create greater efficiencies and improve operations.
Well, you know, I have a couple, can I, Mr. Chair, can I make some remarks? The assistant town manager was eliminated in 2013. Then in the spring of 2014, instead of getting another assistant town manager, the town manager created the land use director position and said that would be the unofficial assistant town manager. So the town manager said, all right, we're not going to have an assistant town manager. We're going to have a land use director instead. And she created a 5-page document, had public hearings, and went through all of the steps because she was creating a new position. You're creating a new position of HR director. That requires the same amount of thoroughness and public hearing. I just disagree with Attorney Terry on that.
Well, you actually sent a letter out because in response to your email about that it should require a public hearing process per the, and as the board is well aware, Attorney Terry reviewed it and said it does not apply to
Yeah,
this
but I think he's
position.
wrong. He's just a lawyer. You know, you can ask another lawyer and he'd give you another opinion.
But he's our lawyer, and I think he's right, so.
And even if it isn't a matter of law, you owed it to the community. You owed it to the Board of Selectmen to discuss this with us before presenting it as part of the budget. My jaw dropped when I heard it. I just can't believe that you would put 2 positions in the budget without discussing it ahead of time.
I did. It was in the financial forecast.
You know, you need to look globally. What do we need for positions in town? As I've mentioned lately, I think we need a town engineer. We are going to spend $500,000 over the next 5 years on consulting engineering for stormwater. No shovel in the ground. If we look at all of the positions we need to help move the community forward, we have to at least consider a town engineer. You're not looking at the whole picture. You're looking at the whole picture. You know, when I looked at the tasks assigned to the land use director, you're doing some of those.
Such as?
Procurement.
That's not the land use director's.
I don't have that letter there. I don't have the 5-page thing in front of me right now. Does anyone have it? Some of those things you're doing.
That's not the land. It was an umbrella of creating a new department to.
It's not an umbrella. It's not a no department. They just coordinated the land use departments under one head. It didn't create a new department.
It did, though.
It did not. What's the new department?
It created a new role.
It created a new role, like HR is a new role.
No, it created the previous, if you remember, the previous job was a planning director or whatever it was. It was solely planning, and it had no relationship, Marion Benson, it had no relationship at all to the other building departments. It just had the planning board. And it was an organizational change, and it was presented as a result of the charter. This is not even creating an HR department. It's dealing with staff within the town manager's existing department. And she did make us aware of it starting February 15th with the first pass of the budget, and we saw it about 6 times before your jaw dropped.
We did not see it 6 times before my jaw dropped. You know, February, when the budget's presented, it's like set in stone. There are never any changes made to the budget. The preliminary budget's it. Just like the capital plan's it. I really think we need to review the whole budget process because once it's presented, it's totally inflexible. Nothing moves.
I disagree with you.
Well, what moved?
The numbers have moved several times. There's been negotiations back and forth with the school committee.
Okay, other than the school committee, what's moved?
Capital planning was a result of months of work before we actually sat down and prioritized anything.
But once you prioritize it, it's done. You're totally inflexible. It's unreasonable to expect citizens to attend every capital planning meeting. Even if they do, they don't have any say in it. There should be a public hearing where the capital plan can be adjusted.
We welcome any comment of anyone who shows up to those meetings, and there was a prioritization meeting that anyone was welcome to come to. I think we had maybe 2 people from the public who chose to show up, and they expressed their opinions and they were heard.
And the capital planning group presents to the finance committee, which is an open meeting, and then the finance committee has an open public hearing.
Nothing ever changes.
Yeah, about 3 people came. And I know I was one of them.
So I think that these two, the HR personnel, assistant town manager position should be removed from the budget, as well as the recreation director. I had one of the people from the Parks Commission invited me over, and because they wanted to explain the recreation position, spent an hour and a half telling me how the seasonal nature of this position was really the best part about it, because they were going to be working in the summer when the fields were being used and would have day-to-day use. They could make sure people were paying who were using the fields, make sure the people that didn't pay weren't using the fields, and just went on and on and on. Then I get an email the other day and say, oops, sorry, it's not seasonal.
Well, I want to know why they had a discussion with you anyway, as opposed to coming to the board.
They just invited, they said, listen, I'd like to talk to you about the position if you'd like. I said, sure.
Okay.
So they didn't even understand the position. So that's how little thought went into it.
No, the seasonal, that's a determination made on the type of business that a position. But
why did the Parks Department think that it was seasonal?
Because initially we thought it could be seasonal, because that's the primary season that they're gonna need someone doing that work.
Right.
But it still can be fluctuating hours. It doesn't mean that they could work the same hours in the winter as the summer. It's the total number of hours over the year that makes it part-time.
So to be seasonal, it has to be 20 weeks or less?
No.
20 hours a week.
Yeah.
No, seasonal. Seasonal is
20 weeks,
hours
yes.
a week.
Yeah.
20 weeks is, so you could hire a recreation director for 20 weeks?
No, this cannot be seasonal because it has to be, the position, the job has to be seasonal in nature, like the beach.
Mm-hmm.
It's seasonal. It
Right.
can't be open in the winter.
Right.
A rec director, that's not classified as seasonal because the position itself could be year-round.
But it isn't, and so why, just like the people at the beach, why couldn't you have a seasonal rec director? Isn't it
It's
more
a determination made by
Isn't it more determined by the number of hours they work?
No. It's documentation that we have to submit to the state that determines that's a seasonal position.
And you didn't understand that when you first put it forward?
That this particular position.
Oh. So I sort of rest my case.
That's insulting.
You didn't understand that piece of it, is what you're saying.
It was a discussion over meetings with the Parks Commission to develop this. I'm bringing forward a need that they have expressed.
You know, other boards, Finance Committee expressed they needed a minutes taker. We haven't done anything about that.
That's a
I think
board.
that's something you expressed.
No, I think
Yes.
the Finance Committee expressed.
I think every board expressed the minutes taken.
Right.
No, I mean, Parks has been digging themselves out of the hole for the past couple of years because they were literally an inactive board for the longest time. They're trying to get going somewhere in some direction. If any board needs staff to help them out, I think it's that one. And it affects the most people as well. We keep saying we need more open space in town. We need more open space in town. We need recreation. We need fields. We need... How do you want to get that from a 3-person volunteer board who's right now they're handling payments, collecting payments, when they shouldn't be doing that? There should be a staff person doing that, not volunteers taking payments for fields and calculating it all up.
I believe we may end up there with a rec person and an assistant town manager. I just don't think it's been well thought out.
I think it's overdue. It's actually been on hold. It's way overdue.
Well, I just didn't hear anything about either one before February. And I've been on the board for, what, 5 years? So, I just think there wasn't enough discussion about it.
Okay, well, this is on the agenda because you wanted it on the agenda. We are about to go into talking about the warrant articles, so what is it you want to do?
Well, I'd like to remove those positions from the budget. That's what I'd like to do.
But the charter, it's the town manager's budget. That's...
He just asked me what I'd like to do.
Yeah. So. And I'm just clarifying what the charter says.
And again, to say that it just showed up, I mean, the budget process takes a long time to find out how much money we're going to have and hone in on where she has to put it for the people who want it. So eventually you find out how much money you have and where you want to spend it. It'd be silly to go back in September or something like that and say, we're going to add these positions, or I want to add these positions, and have a long discussion about it and get to February and I don't have the money for that.
I don't know. I really liked the model that Kerry Spidell showed us with the land use director. I think that was very professionally done.
For a different purpose.
I feel it was the same purpose. Hiring hiring staff members.
No, creating a department and a reorganization, which is required by the charter. Hiring a staff person is within the realm of professional job that we've hired the town manager to do.
It's semantics. I believe that the land use director did not create a new department. He was just put in charge of the land use departments. That didn't create a new, what department is it that was created?
The land use department. What Marion did was a volunteer position that eventually got formalized for her. She had no responsibility over any other boards besides planning, and she had a hard enough time taking care of that.
I'm talking about the land use director position. When the land use director position was created, he became in charge of the land use boards.
Correct.
So there weren't any new boards created.
It made a department.
It made a department out of them. All those boards reported individually up through the town manager, and she created a department headed by a new job called the land use director, a department. And the charter called for that to go through a process. In this case, we have the town manager who's responsible for the existing departments, and she's adding staff within her budget. She's not even asking for a budget increase for this.
I think the HR director is a new position, and I think it should have gone through a review process, and I think we should spend this fiscal year looking at where do we need to add heads.
Mr. Chair, can I read the letter from Town Council?
Please.
Okay. I am writing in response to your request for advice regarding whether you need to follow the administrative plan requirements set forth in Article 5, Section 5-1, Paragraph B of the Town Charter if you are creating a new HR Director, Assistant Town Manager position in the proposed budget. Article 5, Administrative organization calls for the grouping of town agencies into convenient units for the delivery of municipal services. The organization of the town into operating agencies for the provision of services and administration of the government may be accomplished through either one of the methods provided in this article. Section 5-1, paragraph A allows for town meeting by bylaw to reorganize, consolidate, create, merge, divide, or abolish any town agency in whole or in part, or to establish new town agencies as it deems necessary or advisable. Alternatively, Section 5-1, paragraph B allows the town manager to accomplish the same type of changes by developing a plan of reorganization after consultation with the Board of Selectmen. The board would then be required to hold at least one public hearing regarding the plan. Under this alternate approach, the plan may be implemented if the town meeting does not disapprove the plan by a majority vote within 60 days. In short, Article 5, by either of these approaches, applies to the reorganization, consolidation, creation, merger, division, or abolition of existing town agencies in whole or in part. The proposal to add a new position of HR Director, Assistant Town Manager is not a reorganization, consolidation, creation, merger, division, or abolition of a town agency in whole or part as contemplated by Article 5. Rather, this is a new position in the office of the town manager. By comparison, if the town would be creating a new human resource department, for example, Article 5 would apply.
So you don't support that, but we're going to talk about a warrant article that's the whole budget. So
I don't think we should vote on it without Katie being here.
okay, let me make a suggestion. We're going to go through all the warrant articles because it's going to the printer before we meet again. We have a couple of kind of decision points, if you will. If we want our opinion to be printed in the warrant that goes out, we have to vote tonight. If we want them all to go out or some to go out without the Board of Selectmen recommendation, that's okay. But I still believe we ought to go through article by article to ensure that we're okay with it being printed.
Okay.
Okay, in addition, I think that we have to determine, we have a unique situation this year in that we only have 4 board members. So whether we vote tonight to have it printed, whether we vote at the town meeting, we have to understand there may be a situation where we have a deliberation and a vote where it's equally for and against any particular warrant article.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that point we have to say that the board has no recommendation one way or the other, because we don't recommend it, we don't not recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do whatever we do as a board.
Mm-hmm.
So
and we probably have to say that if it's not unanimous, we have to say how we voted.
well, we've always had to say that. So even if it's 3-1, we would say the board recommends 3-1. But my point is, if the board votes 2-2, the board doesn't recommend or not recommend. We just don't take a position.
Right.
Because as a board, we're not going either way.
Right.
And that would be unfortunate, but it's a possibility.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah. So, can we move to the warrant articles?
Sure.
And our purpose here is to do what? To make sure that they're going to the printer, that we didn't find some critical mistake. And that if we want to, the Finance Committee, by the way, at their last meeting did recommend approval on several, held several till town meeting, and declared that some of them had no financial impact. And you told me there was one on here that has, the one we're working from here, there was one minor, or maybe not so minor, change by town council, right? Which number was that?
34, I think.
Okay. Article 30.
Is what's in our things, what you're looking at?
Yeah, should be right. The one that's in here is the same as this, right?
Okay.
I just have my notes from the Finance Committee on this one.
Yeah, so the language in some of the articles, because I received the red line version from Town Council today on minor language changes to some of the articles, excluding the citizen petition ones, obviously. So he is still working on Article 34, which was the one submitted by ZBA. That just has to have additional wording in it.
Okay.
But the essence of the article is the same.
So now we do have one other choice. I'm not thrilled with it, but given that we only have 4 and we only have 3 with us tonight, it's something to consider. And that is that we don't print any of our recommendations in the one that goes out. And we do have an opportunity to at least vote on some before town meeting, so we don't have to vote on every single article on the town meeting floor.
So if our recommendation's not in the warrant.
If we don't make it tonight, it's not going to get printed.
Mm-hmm.
But we
Probably
have.
just say deferred.
Yeah. But the point is, we might vote between now and town meeting so that we don't have to have a deliberation on the town floor. We tend to hold those if there's a presentation involved.
Right, right.
But if there's no presentation, we know all the facts, we try to have that decision here so that we don't have to slow down town meeting by having a vote at town meeting.
So then whoever reads that particular article would just say how the selectmen vote kind of thing.
Exactly. And I'm open to any suggestions on getting from here to there. We have a unique situation, as I said, with four board members.
Maybe we should just do that, just not put anything in the warrant.
Either that, or if there's anything that's not unanimous between the 3 of us.
Yeah, that's right. Anything that's not unanimous for the 3 of us.
You want to quickly go through and see if there's any we can say we're going to recommend? Okay, let's do that. You want to walk us through?
Article 1 is the standard article every year. It's to hear and accept regular written reports, town officers.
I think we can approve that.
Yes.
Support that. Okay. So should we make it an individual motion for all these, or?
Yes.
Yes, we probably need
I
one.
move that the Board of Selectmen support Article 1.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Article 2 is to amend the bylaw that created the revolving funds by replacing the table with this table in the warrant.
Okay. I move that we support Article 2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Cruising.
No.
You're doing good.
Article 3 is to, so we still have to vote every year about authorizing the revolving funds spending limits for the ensuing fiscal year. So that's.
I move Board of Selectmen supports Article 3.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Article 4 is for payment of prior year expenses. Right now, there's one outstanding prior year expense for $500, but that number could change, so if you want to defer that.
Finance held off until they see if there's any more than 500. I suggest we do the same.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
So deferred.
Please.
Yep.
Article 5 is for the adjustments to the fiscal 19 budget, and this will be the plan is to do snow and ice under this article to transfer funds.
Finance Committee would defer. Do we see a need to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's defer
All right.
that.
Defer that one.
Okay. Article 6 is for the fiscal 20 capital plan.
I'd like to defer that.
I get a feeling we're not going to get a unanimous vote on that one.
Okay, well, we'll defer it either way.
Yeah.
Okay. Article 7 is the fiscal 20 omnibus budget.
Let's defer that.
reluctantly.
Article 8 is to replace the salary schedule under the salary administration plan for fiscal '20, and that's going to be presented at town meeting.
So let's defer on that because it's a presentation.
Sure.
Article 9 is to transfer $100,000 from free cash into stabilization.
Move that we support Article 9.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 10 is to...
Want me to do the motion?
transfer $200,000 out of free cash into the special purpose stabilization account.
Move the Board of Selectmen supports Article 10.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 11 is for the OPEB trust fund to transfer $150,000 from free cash and $656 from the sewer enterprise.
Move Board of Selectmen supports Article 11.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 12 is for the sewer enterprise budget for fiscal '20.
Move Board of Selectmen supports Article 12.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Article 13 is to transfer from available funds a sum of $27,521 into the sewer capital reserve stabilization fund.
Move the Board of Selectmen supports Article 13.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 14 is to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to operate the solid waste disposal program enterprise fund for fiscal '20.
Move the Board of Selectmen supports Article 14.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 15 is to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to operate the water enterprise fund for fiscal '20.
Move the Board of Selectmen supports Article 15.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 16 is to create a PEG Access Enterprise Fund and transfer the balances that remain in the Receipts Reserved Fund and the Tech Capital Fund into that account.
Board of Selectmen supports Article 16.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 17 is to raise and appropriate or transfer funds of anticipated receipts of $152,000 into the PEG Enterprise Fund.
Move the Board of Selectmen supports Article 17.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 18 is in the event that Article 16 does not pass, to create the enterprise fund. So it would be funding the fiscal '20 operating budget for PEG out of the receipts reserved.
Board of Selectmen supports Article 18.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 19, same thing. This is to appropriate funding from the Comcast Tech Capital Grant Fund in the amount of $120,000 to the fiscal '20 capital budget for PEG.
Move Board of Selectmen supports Article 19.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 20 is to vote to appropriate a sum of $35,000 from the sale of cemetery lots to be used for the care and improvement and embellishment of the town cemeteries.
Move Board of Selectmen supports Article 20.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 21, 22, 23, and 24 have to do with the old primary school building, to convey that building and property for Article 21, to convey and for the land and building for the Brooks House for Article 22. Article 23 is just to convey the building of the Brooks House.
I kind of think we should wait on these, because you know, the remaining board member has an opinion on it. So I just feel like I would, you know, she's home with a sick kid, you know.
No, I mean, I would have preferred to vote on this and support it, but I suppose out of respect for Mrs. Adams, we can defer that.
Yeah, I think it's
I'll agree. Maybe I can recommend that we try to have that debate here and have a
Yes.
vote before town meeting so that we don't cloudy up everybody else's time.
yes, no, I would appreciate that too.
Mhm.
I'm sure we'll have it again in town meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to defer through,
Through 24.
yeah.
Article 25 is to delete the temporary moratorium and replace it with a new section, non-medical marijuana establishments.
I would move that the Board of Selectmen supports Article 25.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Article 26 through 31 are all the particular uses regarding prohibition for each of those uses.
Yeah, I'd like to defer that because I'm not going to be able to support any of those prohibition articles.
Well, before we defer it, I also am not going to support.
I'm not going to support it either. So do we want to wait and have that discussion, or do we want to have it printed in the warrant?
I'd like to see it. I mean, I'd rather have it printed in the warrant. Well, we're going to have the discussion anyway, but no one's changing my mind on it.
This is so tough. I think the fact that we're printing something supersedes my feeling that we should respect our kind of code. So if you make the motion, I'll accept it.
What are the article numbers? 26 through
31.
31. I move the Board of Selectmen vote to not support Articles 26 through 31.
There's a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Got that?
Yep. You don't recommend approval.
Nope. 32 is collecting the dough on it.
Yes, this 32 is to impose an excise on the retail sales of marijuana of the 3%.
Move the Board of Selectmen supports Article 32.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 33 is to create a new section of the protective bylaw for cluster development. Sorry, modify section 5.6.
I assume you're going to do a presentation on that one.
Want to defer?
I'd almost rather defer some of these ones. That one anyway.
Okay.
Deferred for 33.
Yeah.
Article 34 is to transfer 0.79 acre parcel on Whalen Road, and to transfer would be to the Parks Commission per a special permit that was issued for this by the ZBA, and that's who it's submitted by.
Does the Parks Commission approve this?
I don't think they've had a vote on that, but
Fine, it's deferred.
Yeah.
Not having been to the Parks Commission, I don't want to say they don't support it. They are looking for certain inspections that I don't believe will be done. So I don't believe that they're going to support it. And I think the DPW director spoke to that at the Finance Committee meeting.
So we should defer it then? Huh?
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Defer.
Article 35 and 36 are the charter articles.
That big enough for you want to defer it, or should we take a vote on it?
I'd just as soon take a vote on it.
Move we support Article 35.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
You said 36 is the same?
Mm-hmm.
Move the Board of Selectmen support Article 36 as well.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 37, you've seen, is the pilot for 190 Electric Ave.
I move Board of Selectmen supports Article 37.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 38 is to amend the zoning map by rezoning portions of land located at 131. It's a long article, so this was a citizen's petition.
I would suggest the rest of them are all citizens petitions. Maybe we wait and see what the citizens have to say about
I agree.
Yep.
Okay. So, do we need to sign something on this tonight?
Yep.
Do we need a motion or just our signature is what we need?
If you want to vote to sign the annual town meeting warrant.
Make a motion we vote to sign the annual town meeting warrant for 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Caught me sleeping.
All in favor?
Aye.
I was sure your clinger, you'd slide your discharge papers in here while signing this. What is this? Okay, these are those stuff. What is that? Okay. All righty, let's see. Gonna wait on that. Okay, minutes. Well, I don't see any minutes. Warrants. Accounts payable in the amount of $228,526.24. Accounts payable in the amount of $576,891.05. Toothache that's moved quick. Town payroll in the amount of $788,245.10. And the town election warrant. Need a motion on this one?
Okay, motion doesn't.
Yeah, I move we sign the 2019 annual town election warrant.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's it on signing? Okay, any action file issues?
I have one. I met with the senior tax work-off program, and they endorsed and approved some improvements, and I would like to put those on the next agenda for discussion. It's such as...
Actually, I just realized I passed the town manager's report, and
Oh.
I think there's something in there about that, so...
Oh, okay.
If you still want to put that on, we could do that afterwards, too. Do you want to just hold your action item? until I-
Absolutely,
Okay, I'm
absolutely.
sorry. Can we go to town manager's report? My bad.
No problem. I'll just find the darn thing.
You're up.
So just two reminders about events. The Red Sox World Series trophies coming to the Eagle House Sunday, April 7th, 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. And the dementia-friendly kickoff event is Monday, May 20th at 6 p.m. at the library. Okay. Reminder, there are information sessions about community solar on Wednesday, April 10th at 6:30 p.m. in the Lunenburg Middle School Collaborative Room, D132, and Saturday, April 13th at 10 a.m. in the library. One clarification, because residents were mailed out a letter this past week, and there was something on there about that there's no penalty for opting in or opting out. I got a call from one resident, so I emailed Nexant to get clarification on this. So about the opt-out at any time, residents can cancel whenever they want, but it takes the utility up to 6 months notice to unenroll them from the program. During this time, they will receive credits if they still have an account with the utility. If they move and their account is closed, they will automatically be removed from the program. Mass Recycles Recycling Summit. I attended Mass Recycling Summit on March 25th, and the speakers and the content was very informative and relevant. Sessions covered the change in the recycling market since China's national sword policy, the Department of Environmental Protection's response to assist cities and towns to adjust to these changes, discussion on contract terms with haulers of recycling and solid waste, and recycling education campaigns to reduce contamination. The message from DEP is that the change in the recycling market is going to require some more education, a thoughtful approach to innovation, and a citizenry that wants to do the right thing when it comes to recycling. We have a good regulatory process in Massachusetts that will get us through this difficult time in the recycling market. DEP has responded with a variety of technical assistance programs and capital equipment grants to start up such things as glass recycling facilities. The town joined as partner to Mass DEP's Recycling Smart initiative, and I plan on applying for the Recycling IQ Kit grant, which provides funding to educate the public in order to reduce contamination rates and funding to hire curbside recycling container inspectors to correct bad recycling habits. Mass DEP wants to spread the message that this is not the end of recycling. There are still markets for products, but now the processing costs exceed the commodity. We continue to advocate to recycle because it means lower energy consumption. There are jobs and businesses that are in the recycling industry, and it is for the public good. Recycling education campaign. In addition to the Recycling IQ Kit grant that I plan on applying for, I've requested in writing the educational support funds from Casella in the amount of $3,800 that is in our contract terms, and will receive these funds in a few weeks. I've also requested a list of possible educational outreach activities that Casella can provide, and was provided a list that included a Recycle Better event with an education table, a display, and a presentation at the library for kids or adults, presentation to younger school kids, or host an education table at the start of or end of a benefit walk run. I forwarded this to the school superintendent for her feedback, and she's going to speak with her principals. A safety committee meeting to address the new compliance requirements under OSHA that municipalities are now subject to as of February 1st. We have formed a safety committee comprised of the police chief, fire chief, DPW director, school facilities director, the payroll benefits risk management coordinator, and myself. We met with our risk management representative from our insurance company, Maya, on March 26th to discuss the training and compliance requirements that each department will need to work towards documenting compliance. Staff training and assessment of safety procedures that comply with OSHA will be an ongoing, continual process. an update on a business town partnership meeting. The MRPC has created a implementation plan based on the December 2017 report issued from Montechusett Regional Planning Commission on the formation of a business town partnership. The report breaks down tasks into recommendations that can be implemented within a year, recommendations that will take 1 to 5 years to implement, and recommendations that will take 5 or more years to implement. The plan also identifies estimated costs for each task by categorizing recommendations that will take less than $1,000 to implement, cost between $1,000 and $10,000 to implement, and recommendations that will cost over $10,000 to implement. We have implemented 5 of the 6 short-term recommendations to date and are asking for funding in the fiscal 20 capital plan at the annual town meeting for one of the recommendations that takes 1 to 5 years, which is the master plan. The land use director and I met with the business association yesterday to discuss the implementation plan, to listen to their feedback and comments. The recommendation they are most interested in pursuing at this point in time is recommendation 10, which is to encourage and help facilitate an annual festival. This report has also been sent to the planning board, and I would recommend that the Board of Selectmen and Planning Board have a joint meeting in the future to discuss those tasks, where they are the responsible entity for implementing the task and discuss strategies to implement these recommendations. The town meeting warrant and booklet, you just went over the 43 articles on the town meeting warrant. Based off a suggestion from the Finance Committee, I have asked department heads to submit a list of revenue sources other than the town appropriation that support the operations of their respective departments, and the town that, from the respective town departments that will be incorporated into the booklet. I will also be included a Recycle Smart message that is a good way to communicate with residents as it's sent to all the households in Lunenburg. We received notice that we have got a credit for $11,741 from our insurance company, Maya, for participation in dividend credits. As part of my annual goals, I have completed a draft employee handbook. This includes all the personnel policies that are currently in the Board of Selectmen's policies that the board wanted to be moved into the employee handbook, the process for hiring, and other employee information. As stated under the first section, all the information applies to town employees unless there is a specific provision in a collective bargaining agreement or employee contract that is in conflict with the provisions in the employee handbook. Economic Development Committee, I reached out to the chairs of the Agricultural Commission, Open Space Committee, and Conservation Commission to request they discuss a recommendation for a representative from each commission, committee, or board that would be appointed to the Economic Development Committee. The 2 resident positions will be advertised in the paper and on the town bulletin board as we do with other vacancies. As part of that committee, there is 1 Board of Selectmen and 1 Planning Board member that are chosen annually to serve as ex officio members. We can put this on the next meeting agenda for appointment.
Sure. I'd say I'm interested in volunteering for that, but I just want to put it out there and for everyone else to think about it before they support me for it or not. Is I do own a business in town. I am an architect. I may be working for people trying to start a business in town, so I don't want, if anyone perceives there could be a conflict of interest for me being on that board and potentially working with people, I'm confident in my ability to compartmentalize things, but that would be one thing to think about before anyone suggests me for that.
And while we're on the subject of the Economic Development Committee, are we going to discuss that at some point?
The committee itself? What kind of questions?
I really don't understand the goal, the mission, or the choice of people you're putting on it.
That was already approved.
That's been a goal of us for over a year, and we've talked about it several times. the next step was to put a committee together. I'm not sure what.
And the board adopted the charge in the fall.
The mission?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
The Senior Tax Work-Off Committee update. The Senior Tax Work-Off Committee met on March 27th and discussed possible changes to the Senior Tax Work-Off regulations, including increasing the hourly rate from $10 to $12, increasing the maximum abatement allowed from $1,000 to $1,500, and increasing the income level from $40,000 to $50,000 for a one-person household and $60,000 to $75,000 for a two-person household. The chairman will be meeting with the Board of Assessors to talk about the effect of these changes on the overlay account, and eventually a recommendation will be made to the Board of Selectmen. Do you want to discuss that now?
No, that's great.
Yeah, okay.
Meetings. This past week I attended the Personnel Committee meeting on March 26th, and the Neshoba Valley Dispatch Admin Board meeting on March 27th, the Senior Work-Off Committee meeting on March 27th, the Finance Committee public hearing on the budget on the 28th, and the Stormwater Task Force meeting last night, April 1st. I'll be attending a dispatch negotiation meeting on April 4th. Various members, staff members will be meeting with a planner from MRPC on April 8th regarding the pending walkability and parking study. This will be the first of multiple meetings, and MRPC will get input from all the stakeholders and public by the end of the study. The Architectural Preservation District Commission will be touring the inside of the old primary building on April 4th with the town facilities technician, Kit Walker.
I had a couple of questions, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm.
The solar credits, are all town buildings going to receive solar credits at this point?
Through this program, they're already, so the existing net metering agreements that we have, they're assigned to town buildings.
So all town accounts have credits?
Yeah, to all town accounts. When that came before the board, John Londa came before the board at that point, presented a plan based on usage of each of the facilities. The plan divided up the total 50% town, 50% school, and the larger user accounts were given a percentage that they would support the usage.
So are all town accounts receiving something at this point? Or are there any that are sort of left out?
No, because not all town buildings get solar net metering credits, correct?
Can that be changed so they do?
It could. It can be changed twice a year on the Schedule Z.
Oh, it's different than the residential then?
Yes.
Yeah, if you recall, John came in with a whole proposal to use them in the places that had the most.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, the sewer commission are going to get all their pump stations on it, I think, in this, so that confuses me. If they're sort of treated like a residence then?
You're talking about the Nexamp Community Solar?
Mm-hmm.
So that can only be changed twice a year too, and that was part of that statement I read, that the utility changes that every 6 months.
But isn't that part of the public outreach now, to get more people enrolled? Isn't that the next amp?
Yes, but we have separate net metering agreements from different projects.
So you can't double up?
So can we?
We can't double up.
We can't double up, but I mean, if there are some town accounts that aren't.
That we could sign on for the community solar?
Right.
We could certainly look at that.
15% is 15%. Thank you. And you know, on the recycling, having people look at recycling, would it be like a summer college kids job sort of thing, you thinking?
Yes.
Great. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay. So is there any other action file issues? I'm sorry for getting it. Okay. Any committee reports?
I do have a couple. The Stormwater Task Force met last night. They voted to accept the DCI engineering's proposal for consulting engineering work to be completed in year 1 of the municipal separate storm sewer system permit at $51,650. Year 1 ends June 30th, 2019, so the work must be completed with all due speed. The town is preparing to go out to bid for engineering consulting services for year 2. The task force has received an estimate for the engineering consulting services for the 5 years of the permit at $442,000. No shovel in the ground, no improvements to the stormwater infrastructure, only engineering consulting. Figures like these are why I believe the town needs to take a good look at what the global needs of the town are before any new hires are added to the payroll. It just may be time to consider adding a town engineer. When I began to become involved in the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition, I realized that many of the 30 communities in the coalition already have town engineers. Some have their DPW directors as town engineers. So they're able to substantially reduce the amount they spend on outside consulting, although none are able to completely eliminate it. I attended a steering committee of the 30-town-member Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition last Wednesday. The coalition will have a booth set up at the annual Coalition of Lakes and Ponds meeting on April 12th at Mass Fish and Wildlife. I'll be able to help out, and therefore Lunenburg will be able to use this as an example of our town's public outreach in the annual report we have to compile. The coalition is planning to sponsor presentations by member communities such as Ashland and Shrewsbury, which are now working to successfully inaugurate stormwater utility enterprise funds in their towns at the coalition's annual meeting in November. This will be a benefit to all municipal separate storm sewer system permittees who are attempting to come to terms with how to finance the requirements of the new MS4 permit. The next meeting of the steering committee will be held right here in Lunenburg at the Public Library on May 8th at 10 a.m., and I'm looking forward to that commute. That's it.
Anything? Nope. Okay, our upcoming meeting schedule, we meet next Tuesday, April 9th. The town manager will be on vacation on the 16th, so we have to decide, do we want to have our meeting on the 16th without the town manager present, or if we want to forego that meeting. I don't know if there's any opinions at this point. I'll be working with the town manager tomorrow on next week's agenda.
So would we just move it to the following week?
Well, we have one on the 23rd. We obviously don't have one on the 30th. It's a matter of...
Yeah, I mean, it depends how packed the agenda is. If we have to... If it's so many items, we need to have a meeting to not throw things
So
out.
we're meeting next week and we can decide then, right?
But should I attempt to kind of spread it out so that we don't meet on the 16th if that's possible?
Sure.
I just think that might be, yeah, okay?
Be lovely.
Yeah, okay. So I'll attempt to
Not that I don't love this, but, you know.
I'll attempt to do that, and I'll report next week on how it looks, all right? But we will meet on the 23rd, and I don't think we have to add the 30th because we do have, well, we'll have to see with town meeting coming up. We don't have a meeting scheduled for the 30th, and the sewer commission is here, but we'll have to see if we're ready for town meeting. I think we are, but we'll see.
Seems it.
Okay? Any other input on upcoming schedule? Superb. Is there any final public comment from the public? Please.
I remain Tom Alonso at 284 Lancaster Avenue, also known as Bad Manners, as we heard earlier this evening. I was just about to head out, but of course I got interested in the town meeting, the town manager evaluation process, and something really struck me, and I figured I would share it with you, and I asked town council unofficially. In the discussion, of course, it was determined, or at least presented to the board, that if you present or reference a document in an open meeting, by definition, that document becomes public record, even if, in this case, it's a personnel item. Now, a few things are true. So the first one is that personnel files in general are very protected, and it's to protect the privilege of the employee. So it seems very suspect to me that you could carve out an exception that would compromise another person's privilege. I have serious problems with that to begin with. And although it may be legally what is allowed right now, eventually I believe that's probably going to be challenged. And in light of that, I would also ask that the board take specific focus on whether they want to be involved in that. Point number 2 is, in the case that the chair writes the composite review, that will be a performance evaluation that would be the public record in any regard, that would be the only person who would have access to all of the individual evaluations of the other members of the board. And because that person, whoever exists in the chair, has that, he or she could at any point reference them and could make, by that reference, make available to the public record any evaluation that he or she wanted. I can't believe that that would be what you'd want to have happen. So again, I would probably look at having a very strict policy on what the procedure is in making those things public. The last thing I asked him was, in a very hypothetical, if there was a reprimand or there was a hearing about another person, not the town manager, but another employee of town, that in such discussion, a member of the Board of Selectmen or any board, any elected board, got a hold of, and in a public meeting referenced the document that they had. I said, would that absolve the fact that you're actually in any other case would be committing a criminal act by revealing somebody's personnel file? I mean, this is a serious problem with the open meeting law, that one carving out exception. And in preparation of that, I would hope that the board, and any board that does evaluations, this would be the planning board with the planning director, and any evaluation of anybody, that they would take seriously the considerations of privacy and only make such composite documents that a board in general is responsible to making for an employee public. I would just take that, wanted to make that note. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any public comment from the board? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
We adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.